Live from Orlando, Florida, you're now listening to the OZone Podcast, the voice of Orlando Magic fans. Join us every week for a unique fan perspective on all of the latest Magic news and updates. The show starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of the OZone Podcast, the voice of Magic fans. Your host for today is Al, myself, Anthony, and we got a special guest from the Orlando Sentinel, sports writer who covers the Orlando Magic, Roy Parry. What's going on, sir?
Not much, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. But I forgot to mention this earlier, Anthony. I love your beard, by the way. Al, pretty good too. I know it's still coming in a little bit, but it's really good beard you got going on.
Roy, I'll be honest with you. I had 4 months paternity leave. I just had a baby that was born in October. You should have saw my beard. 4 months of not working, my beard touched like the middle of my chest. So if you like this beard, yeah. I got to show you a picture of what it looked like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, please do. And congratulations, by the way. Boy or girl?
It's a girl.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah, right. Good luck. I kind of made an early dad mistake for Christmas, right? So she was already 3 months. She just already celebrated her 3 months around Christmas, and I bought her about $150 worth of Orlando Magic gear. My issue is that I bought it all 0 to 3 months, and she literally only had a good 2 weeks worth of my $150 worth of Orlando Magic gear, which is kind of brutal. Yeah, my wife yelled at me and was like, "You're supposed to get it for 6 months. Now she can't wear any of it."
Yeah,
so
they grow.
Don't want that.
Really fast. What day was she born?
She was born October 2nd.
2nd. Oh, cool. My birthday's on
October
the 4th.
2nd.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Close.
Awesome.
Now, Roy, not a lot of people know that you came from, you were an educator in middle school, and then you were kind of involved in the high school area. You were a history teacher for the 8th grade, if I'm not mistaken.
I was. A little bit of homework.
How did you transition from being an educator to now covering the Orlando Magic for the Orlando Sentinel?
So, in my first life, I was a sports writer. That's what I went to school for. I started working when I was in college. Originally, I was at the University of Missouri for a year, and then I had a friend who was dating a cousin of mine. So he was a really good friend too, but I had done some work over the summer for the paper in Macomb, Illinois. And he said, "Hey, come work for us." And so I transferred to Western Illinois and just started working covering high school sports. I was part-time, but I was working like 35 hours a week while I was going to school. So that's where it really got started. And then just moving around to some different places in Illinois. When you're at small newspapers, you do a little bit of everything. So you have a pretty good taste for what needs to get done. And that's kind of what you become. You just become a guy who gets stuff done. Whatever needs to be done, you step in and take care of it. So always had a good work ethic that way. And I was working in Daytona. I was there for 8 years. My wife originally is from here. We moved back. Our kids were younger. And so we just kind of started talking about, wouldn't it be nice to have summers off with the kids and kind of have the same schedule? So I started looking, and originally I was trying to get a journalism teaching position and had a couple of opportunities that fell through. So back in those days, you didn't have to have a degree in education. You could take the state exams, and I'm pretty good at taking tests. So I was able to pass the tests, get different certifications, and one of those was middle school integrated. So I was able to teach history. I was at Teague Middle in Altamont, and then I got my own teaching job. I was up at Carver Middle in Leesburg. It just was a little different than I expected. It was a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. I really like history. It's something I had a minor in history, so it was a pretty easy transition. But I just found I just wasn't able to quite connect with the kids like I thought I was. So I didn't feel like I was really. Some of the kids, yes, but most of them I just feel like I didn't connect with very well. And so I didn't want to be that teacher. And so I kind of reevaluated some things and took a step back. And then I went and worked at University High School here in Winter City, but I was more like a campus advisor. So I was able to just interact with the kids differently. You get to know them a little bit more. It's in a different setting than the classroom. And I just felt like that was a better way to make a difference. Now you make a heck of a lot less money doing that, but it's one of those things. And I ended up getting hired, got back in newspapers, went to the Sentinel. I was working on the copy desk. And then the way things just sort of happened, Josh Robbins, as you well know, took a job with the Athletic, and then we kind of filled in some gaps a little bit. And I was one of the people that stepped in from time to time. And then I took it over teen season, and then I've had it ever since. So that's sort of how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, it's. I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because during that transition where Josh Robbins ended up leaving, it kind of felt like for a small time period there was really a void from the Orlando Sentinel. Josh Robbins was really one of the only ones at the times that was really bringing out a lot of content directly with the Magic. And what ends up happening is you have a lot of these outside media outlets that they talk about the Magic, but it's really hard if you're an outsider, because if you're a real fan, you're able to kind of spot out the things that really don't connect.
Right.
I just want to say that you've definitely done a really great job in filling that void. I'm a subscriber to The Athletic, but I know that there's a lot of fans out there that they're not crazy about the paywall. And as much as it's worth it, and I definitely want fans to do that. The fact that you're able to write the way that you do and cover the team the way that you have, you've definitely filled that void. So I've been a fan since you've been covering it full time.
I really appreciate that. That really means a lot. So, I'm going to, there's times when you're just grinding through it and you're like, I don't even know if this even makes sense, and you're sending stuff out, and, that's the challenge, is just trying to stay on top of everything, because there's just so much that comes at you. And, I've got a couple stories that I wish I'd already had done by now, and I just haven't been able to stay on top of that kind of stuff. But I appreciate those words. It definitely is encouraging.
Now, you came from the Illinois area and a little bit of Michigan. It sounds like you've been in Orlando for a little while. Did you start having a passion for the Magic at all, or is it more of a job? Like, when it comes to what team do you really follow or really a big fan of, who would you say is that team and who would you say is that player?
In terms of the NBA, I've always been a Bulls fan. I mean, way back we're talking Dave Corzine, Artis Gilmore. I mean, way back when they first started to get on WGN. I mean, I'm an 80s kid, so cable was a big deal, right? And then WGN was like one of the big channels you got with cable. So we started a lot of Bulls games, not more Bulls games. I shouldn't say a lot, but then of course they drafted Michael Jordan, and my goodness, what a great time that was to be a Bulls fan. So I've always been partial to the Bulls. They've not been great the last few seasons. I mean, of all time, my favorite player of all time, would have been Michael Jordan. Probably today. That's a good question.
It sounds like if you're from the Illinois area, it's kind of a requirement to like the Bulls and to like Jordan. It's like it's you're not allowed to like any other team during that time period.
Right. Well, my favorite team of all time would be the '89 Illinois basketball team that had Nick Anderson on it.
Okay.
I mean, just besides my love for the St. Louis Cardinals, I just loved that team because of the way that they played and because they beat Indiana twice that season. So that's another reason. But yeah, they had, some great players, and they played above the rim. It's just like nothing we'd ever seen before. Just love watching those guys. That's probably my all-time favorite basketball team. It was unfortunate they weren't quite able to get to the final. If somebody just bumps Sean Higgins out of the way, they get the rebound and they beat Michigan, but we won't talk about that. But yeah, I just, that was really the thing. I just loved Illinois basketball, growing up. So there was always a natural progression to root for the Bulls, as you said. St. Louis, I actually grew up closer to St. Louis, hence my affinity for the Cardinals, but they didn't have a professional basketball team. So, and really not even a strong college presence in terms of major athletics. So it was always the U of I, and they were on television. You could always watch them play. So that's kind of where that started. But yeah, everything about Jordan I just really liked. Growing up as being a teenager at that time, you're kind of impressionable. You kind of fashion your game after that a little bit. His work ethic, all those things. It was just easy to try to be like Mike, as the saying goes. So, but I tell you, today's game, it's a lot different. I really like watching Bradley Beal play. That guy is amazing. Everybody's out to stop him. I know he takes a lot of shots, every game, in part because he can, in part because he has to.
It has to. Doesn't have a choice.
But it's just the fact that he can still score 32 points a game just is a testament to his ability and his skill. And plus he's a St. Louis guy, so that helps as well. But
I was just going to check that out because I remember that he was from the Midwest, and I kind of thought that he was from there. But he did go to the University of Florida, so technically we can claim him.
That's true. Good point. That's true. Yeah, that's true. So yeah.
So I got to ask, Roy, you grew up watching MJ as a basketball fan growing up. Now you get to follow the NBA every day. You kind of watch LeBron and what he's accomplished. Then I got to simply ask that question. In your thoughts, your opinion, MJ, LeBron, what are you saying on that huge debate?
Well, I think that I don't know if we had ever seen a player like Jordan before he came, not in terms of his skill and all the things that he did well, but just his determination. And you know, I mean, if you've watched any of the Netflix series, which is quite good, you know, you see the impact that had on his teammates. It wasn't always a good thing, but professionally speaking, I mean, what it did for those other guys, Scottie Pippen in particular, I mean, you know, Jordan just said, look, you've got to step up and be the best that you can be. You know, I'm not going to accept anything less. And I think that's just the way that he sort of inspired his teammates to do that, was something that we had never seen. And I mean, you know, it's hard to compare those two as players. You know, Jordan was obviously I think had a better jump shot, a better outside game. The 3-point shot wasn't nearly what it is now. The floor, you know, the spacing isn't what it is now. LeBron's got so much more space to work with. You know, but in terms of physical skill, I don't know that we'll ever see a player like LeBron. Just the guy who's that big, who can move the way that he moves, the way that, you know, he's able to finish around the basket. You know, he's so dangerous inside the 3-point line. Once he gets going to the basket, nobody's going to stop him. You know, and he's figured out how to make plays for everybody around him as well. So, you know, it's really hard to say one is that much better than the other. But I don't know. I would say I probably would if I had to pick between the two, I probably would pick Michael. I think just because of the way that he was able to, you know, like I said, create that sort of and promote that sort of teamwork around, you know, on his team. I'm not saying LeBron isn't a good teammate and doesn't play for his team, because he certainly seems to do that. But, you know, Michael was like the guy. So and I'm trying not to be biased, you know, obviously as a Jordan fan, but, you know, they certainly each have changed the game.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. They have so many different things in common. When you really think about the two of them, they're so comparable in a lot of different ways. And one of my favorite things that I always like to bring up that they have in common is the fact that they were both stopped by the Orlando Magic to make it into the finals. So it's my favorite talking point, which brings up a perfect segue to get into talking about Orlando Magic basketball. So Nikola Vucevic, obviously, he got his second time of getting the nod into the All-Star game, which kind of seeing how the season's going, there's been a lot of disappointment. So it's really the one thing to really go right for the Orlando Magic. How much you think him making the NBA All-Star game does for the team in general, where we're kind of on the fence? We really don't know which direction we're really going to go, whether it's really try our hardest to fight and get into, you know, the play-in tournament and get into the playoffs, or kind of go a different direction. But how much you really think that impacts the team, at least the team morale?
Yeah, I'll say this to start, and we may get into this more. This season has been crazy for every team for a lot of reasons. You know, the pandemic being the first of those reasons. So I just think that anything positive that happens, I think that it is sort of tempered a little bit by the circumstances of what's going on with this season. Now, that being said, teammates love him. They love him because he wants them to succeed as much as he does. I mean, that's really what you get in that dynamic between Vuce and the rest of the Magic, is that he wants others to succeed just as much, you know. And so for him to make the All-Star team, you know, his teammates had talked about it for weeks. They were super excited for the possibility. And of course, the way he was playing and is still playing, it was a really good possibility. So it wasn't some pie in the sky thought that, oh, it's Vooch. He really is deserving of the selection. So I think that it could serve as a little bit of a boost. I mean, as you said, there's been so much adversity that's hit this team this year. For something good to happen, along with the way that they have been playing lately, which is another encouraging sign. Obviously they're just ecstatic for him, and it just gives the organization a little bit more notoriety. It's, hey, the Magic, they got an all-star. Even though he was an all-star a couple years ago, still, playing at a different level. So I think that it can give them certainly a little bit of a psychological boost going forward for sure.
And then, Roy, what's your take on the media and those NBA fans that say Vooch should not be in the All-Star game, that there should be, another player, whether it be Sabonis from Indiana Pacers or whoever it may be? What's your take on those fans or media from the NBA that continue to say that, despite the fact that Vooch has been named an All-Star now?
Well, I think that, if we lived in a perfect world, everybody who deserved it, anything in life would get it, right? That's not the way that it works, unfortunately. So I think that, when you look at the body of work and what the attention that Vooch commands from opposing defenses every night, teams are geared up to stop him. They're geared up to stop Terrence Ross. Those are the two guys that they look at in every game plan. And the way that the Magic were able to play through Vucevic and use him in so many different ways. I mean, if you were to say Nikola Jokic should not be an all-star, that's almost like saying, Vucevic should not be an all-star, because they're very similar players. Jokic has the ball in his hands a lot more. I'd say he's probably maybe a slightly better passer. I mean, it's still close. That's one of the things Vooch does really well. I mean, they're very comparable players. So I don't think that, there's obviously a lot of bias and fans want their own players to make the team for obvious reasons. But I think Vooch certainly was deserving, of it. He's making more threes than any. Well, okay, look, they got Lauri Markkanen listed as a center. He's not really a center. He's playing as a center for the Bulls, but he's a forward. Other than him, nobody's making more threes per game from the 5 spot than Vooch is. And if you just said that 3 or 4 years ago, people probably would have laughed. Like, yeah, Vucevic is going to lead the league in threes from the 5? No way. No way. There's no way.
I say that all the time.
Yeah, just the work that he's put in. I mean, it's just really phenomenal. And to see that coaches can, coaches see what the value of players, and so I think that certainly was that definitely played into Vooch's his favor, because they get to see those guys play. They have to game plan against them. So, it is what it is. I thought, Sabonis was definitely having a great season too. Another guy that's expanded his game. He's not just an inside presence. They play through him a lot too. But, to look at Vooch's numbers and just say, oh, he should be an all-star because he's in Orlando, that's silly. It's just silly.
Yeah, I think the fact that he made it there a second time is so important, just because it proves that the first one wasn't a fluke. And although the national media counted him out, although the fan base, there was nothing there for Nikola Vucevic, I think for him as a player, he should appreciate the fact that he was voted in by the coaches, because they're the ones that have to plan the day before on how to really guard and slow down Nikola Vucevic. And the fact that they all acknowledge that really goes to show you his presence and his impact on a day-to-day basis against opposing teams. Now, it brings up another question. Vucevic is now entering his 9th season with the Orlando Magic, which is, if you really think about it, it's a very long time with the franchise. When you look at the different players that the Magic have already inducted into their Orlando Magic Hall of Fame, do you see Nikola Vucevic as a lock, guaranteed he's going to have a plaque at Amway?
I don't think there's any question. If you look at what he's done over the course of his career, even when they were struggling, he still was putting up pretty good numbers. But at the same time, he's talked about this in the past. It was discouraging. When you're not winning, it's no fun. But you still have to go out there and try to perform at your best. So, testament to him for being able to. And he's certainly not the only player that's ever done that. Just we're talking about Vooch. So, being able to step above that adversity and continue to improve as a player. And the Magic. I mean, certainly the face of the franchise. The last few seasons, provides great leadership. He plays the game the right way, and I think he kind of has come to embody what the Magic stand for off the court as well. He's hooked up in the community. He gives back in a lot of ways. So I think he's a perfect example of someone that the Magic would induct into the Hall of Fame for sure. And that's in addition to all of the records that he's setting and moving up on all sorts of lists as well. So there's a good chance he could become the all-time leading scorer next season. So actually I think that would be this season if I remember my math correctly. Anyway, but yeah, I think he definitely would be a lock for a Hall of Fame.
Crazy to think about when you think back to that Dwight Howard trade, and you think about Vucevic, the piece that he was, and now what he's become, 9 years later, possibly 10. Amazing, really, to think about how that trade worked out. And hey, at the end of the day, the Magic have been the winners. If you think about how that trade really played out, the Magic won that trade.
Yeah, you've got a guy who's put his heart and soul into your organization for 9 seasons, as opposed to somebody who won it out in several other places after they were traded. So, I think from that standpoint, you get a guy who what you're going to get when he goes out on the court. And I think there's a lot to be said for that for sure. So, yeah, you could definitely say that the Magic, probably got the best part of that trade. Looking, as it's progressed, at the time it's maybe not so much, but you didn't quite know what Vucevic had. But yeah, I mean, I think Sixers fans probably maybe are wishing they hadn't given up on Vucevic so soon, but he's not the only player that's gone out of Philly, and fans have bemoaned that. So we'll see.
Listen, every chance that we get to kind of stick it to Sixers fans, we will take it 100%, and we'll keep reminding because it makes us feel better.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Nikola Vucevic, because you made a valid point, he's really liked by his teammates, and a lot of them have publicly came out and said that we need him to make the All-Star game. If he doesn't make it, I'm going to be more upset. He has such a positive outlook around it, and it really says a lot on the player that he is. Now, the Magic, it feels like we really had a really rough patch where a lot of players were injured. We barely were able to put the minimum amount of players on the court. But then we started getting healthy. MCW started getting back, started getting James Ennis, Aminu, Okiki came back. And now the Magic finished a 4-game homestand with a 3-1 record. Now that you're starting to see this team get healthy, and they also did release the second half of the season where it's starting to look like we have the toughest schedule just based on win percentage. Do you see this team being really able to make a playoff push? Is that something with how, if we're looking at a healthy Orlando Magic roster, and we'll just go ahead and throw Cole Anthony back in, saying that he's healthy and he's ready to go. He should be ready in the next couple of weeks. Do the Magics have a chance?
Well, I think that, with this play-in setup, everybody really has a pretty good chance. The way that the Magic have played recently certainly points in that direction. I think that their defensive has obviously been better. Michael Carter-Williams is a big reason for that. They've got Farouk back now. He's made a couple of starts. He's starting to get his rhythm back. That will only help the defense. Aaron Gordon, when he's able to come back from his ankle injury, that's only going to help the defense. So I think the defense is moving in the right direction, and the defense will be okay. That's going to be something that they'll be able to hang their hat on every night, and that's going to keep them in a game. If the offense isn't playing as well as it has at times this season, that defense is going to give them a chance. So, when you look at it from that standpoint, I think they do have a shot to make it. And just the way that this season's gone is teams are they're going this way, then they're going this way, then they're going this way, then they're going this way. It's been such a roller coaster. One night you're 2 games out of 6. Then the next night maybe you're a game out of 6. Maybe the next night if you lose, you're back to 2. But there's just such a narrow gap between 7 and 12 right now that it's really up for grabs. A lot of teams could make a move, and if you get hot at the right time, Miami's played well lately. But you've got so many teams to jump over. It's not as simple as just moving from 12th to 6th. I mean, you've got to go over several teams as well. But I think it's about getting healthy. It's about, starting to play better as a unit. just that they've been able to get guys back has given Steve Clifford more rotations. You guys probably see, you've seen that, and he's tried some different combinations. He's got Okiki playing at the end of games now, because number one, he gives them outside shooting, he gives them defense, he gives them rebounding, gives them something that they can use at the end of a game. He has confidence in them. So you're seeing Steve Clifford be able to mix and match a little bit more, something he wasn't able to do for a little bit of that stretch. And, it's tough. I mean, look, it took them probably a good 2 weeks, maybe longer, to get over the loss of Markelle Fultz. I mean, really, not just what he meant for the team on the court, but just the psychological part of it too. And some of the players said they didn't even realize it, didn't even know that it was having that kind of an effect on them. I mean, because, again, Markelle is another guy who's really loved in the locker room, is about all the right things, the way that he's worked to get to where he was, and just, that lingering effect that guys didn't even realize it. So getting back to a good place, guys that feel good about where their game is, they tend to play that way. So you're starting to see a little bit more of that with the Magic as well.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. When Markelle went down, I'm sure that the players felt that way because the fan base felt that way.
Yeah,
It was demoralizing. And even though that people were excited to kind of see Cole Anthony kind of take that step and get those minutes, it took Cole Anthony a little bit to get his feel for it. But then we started to see him really get into his own. And it starts to feel as if, maybe we do have a shot, and then more injuries happen. So it is good to see the team start to get their health back, because it makes a big difference for Nikola Vucevic when he's able to rely on a player like Evan Fournier, Terrence Ross. Having Aminu back is a big deal. We really didn't get a whole lot of time to really see what he's able to bring to the team, and you almost forget how much he really can impact a game. Yeah,
I think that only being able to play 18 games and it really left kind of a sour taste in the mouths of fans. And,
definitely.
Not that they held it against them, but just, hey, what could Farouk have done for us last year? And, I had a chance to ask him, because if you watched him when he came back, he was moving really well. I mean, not like better than the one I remember from last year. I mean, just looked like a different player. And, I said, hey, one of the questions was, did you feel like your physique has changed? What kind of conditioning work did you do in the off season and such? And he said, yeah, I really tried to focus a little bit on that, and you can see it. His body's changed a little bit. He's got a little better physique this season. And it shows, so the more he gets comfortable, the more minutes he's able to play is only going to help the Magic. He was a really good 3-point shooter from the corner in Portland, before he signed with Orlando. So that's the strength of his. You've seen a little bit of that in Orlando, not a whole lot, but he was a pretty strong 3-point shooter from the corner. And of course, when you got Lillard and McCollum, who were able to drive the ball in the paint and throw it to whomever they want to, I mean, obviously that helps. That's a big part of it. The Magic don't quite have that element now. But as you pointed out, Anthony, with the ball going through Vooch as much as it does, guys finding open spots, when they send double teams at him, he's able to find the right guy. So, Farouk being able to make that shot only helps them from an offensive standpoint, helps them spread the floor a little bit. But yeah, it's just having guys healthy from a mental standpoint is just a boost as well.
Yeah, and now one thing, Roy, that we have coming up, it is, 30 days from now, we have the trade deadline. Actually, exactly 30 days from now. We're starting to see rumors out there more and more. And one of them is Zach Lowe of ESPN recently mentioned in one of his articles that there's patience and optimism in Orlando about the core players being back next season, with J.I. and Fultz coming back from major injuries. And that the only player he thinks that he sees the Magic possibly moving is Evan Fournier. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's an accurate statement, or do you think there's some wiggle room there with the front office, depending on how things go over the next 4 weeks?
Well, I've said this in the past, and I still believe it to be true. I think it's difficult to judge this team because of the injuries. It's hard to look at this team to see what they could be, because they haven't had everybody available. Early in the season when Markelle was out there, you kind of got a better idea. But they didn't have J.I. So you're still missing an important element particularly of your defense. From the help defense that he provides, the shot blocking and rim protection. I mean, he was a steal machine last year too. So he just makes your defense so much better when he's on the floor. Now, that being said, Markel's probably not going to be available when the season starts if they go back to the normal schedule when they start in October. We don't know yet. So, we're looking at, January-ish before he's probably coming back. So, and and same with Jonathan seems to be on track for his recovery, but at the same time, these are major knee injuries and there's no guarantees. 98% of the time guys come back from them and they're okay, and we all certainly want that to be the case for sure. No question. But you just don't ever know. So I think that it's really hard to gauge and judge this team based on who they don't have. Now, Steve Clifford always says, look, we got to focus more about who we do have and who we don't have. But the front office, they can kind of look at things a little bit differently. So I just think that, they've hitched their wagon to Vooch in terms of what he does for the offense. So if he were to be moved, I get it that it's a sell high moment. I get that. Its value is probably never greater than it will ever be. But at the same time, who needs Vucevic, but who also can give you what you need and want, and at the same time, and who's willing to pay that price? I mean, the front office, they're listening to offers, they're hearing things. So they're always going to entertain possibilities, So I don't have anything specific on what those might be. Vucevic's contract is slightly descending for the next 2 years, but he's still making in the mid to upper 20s. That's a big commitment for a lot of teams. The Celtics have been rumored to be after him for quite a long time. They were interested a couple of years ago in the offseason when he was a free agent, but they haven't even started paying Tatum his max deal yet. I mean, it's not as simple as just saying, okay, he should go to the Celtics. Well, the Celtics would have to send like 8 guys back. The Magic can't take 8 guys. They obviously have some picks, but I don't know if they're willing to take that step beyond this season. And I think that Vooch is a good fit in Portland. I mean, the way that they run their pick and roll, he would spread the floor and shoot the three and really thrive out there. But at the same time, who would the Magic get back? So I don't know that it's as easy as looking at it as Vooch would make any team better, but what do the Magic get in return? What are they willing to take in return? And in terms of Fournier, I think that it certainly makes sense for the Magic to try to move him because he is in the final year of his contract. I don't get the sense that, he's really going to be part of what they do moving forward. He does like it here. He plays well with Vooch for what it's worth. I know that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. The Euro brothers, the 2-man game is really good, when they're playing well. And I think that Evan's done a better job this year of kind of diversifying his offense. He's getting to the basket a little bit more, probably turns the ball over just a little bit more than he wants to. But he's getting to the free throw line about 5.5 times a game. He's still a really good 3-point shooter. I think that it's just hard when you step back and look at the NBA landscape. You're like, when you start to look around, you're thinking, well, who are we going to pay $16 million a year? I mean, he's going to get, if he goes into free agency, he's going to get more than that, most likely next season, pandemic notwithstanding. But it's hard to look at that and say, who can we get for $16 million who's going to provide, that kind of value, from your offense? I mean, the idea is that you have Markel at the point, you have Cole at the 2, and then those guys can mix and match and do all sorts of different things. But, you just don't quite know what you're going to have with Markel yet. Cole's still a rookie who's now missed a little bit of time. So you're still looking at, progression. He's got to be able to be on the court to make progress. As you guys know, that's the best way guys get better. They just got to be on the court. So I don't know. I could see them trying to move Fournier. Again, it's going to be the asking price. Who's going to take him on an expiring contract if he's not willing to re-sign? He says, look, I want to go to free agency. That's going to be a hard sell for a lot of teams. If you got a 2nd-round pick back, would that be enough? I don't know.
I think what makes everything so difficult is the fact that, we have suffered injuries for what it seems like, since this front office is kind of taken over. We really haven't been able to see 100%. And the little time that we did, the team excelled. They excelled really, really well. And the fan base kind of looks at it as, all right, we've tried the Nikola Vucevic and Evan Fournier thing for a really, really long time. And all we've gotten out of it were game 1s and 2 playoffs, and that's about it. Right. Which, and granted, to give him credit, that's a lot better than, the pre-Steve Clifford era. We were finally able to get back to the playoffs after so many years. But Evan Fournier is such a polarizing player because out of everyone on the roster, I would have to say easily he's the one that probably receives the most criticism. But Nikola Vucevic was also in that same boat a couple seasons ago. He's now getting the respect from the fan base that he definitely deserves. And I think that he's probably the most unique case. Because the fact that now, great, he got the second feather on the hat with the All-Star game. He's playing really, really well. He's given 9 years to the franchise, but he's also, entering. He's in his prime, but he's entering not the wrong side of the 30, where he may not be the best piece with the young core. And I honestly believe that Nikola Vucevic is, if you were to move Nikola Vucevic, you're not going to get the same value in return. What he's able to bring to the team, I just don't see it possible that you're going to get back something that you're just like, wow, I can't believe we ran away with that. So you mentioned there earlier, do the Magic sell high? Is that what you would do? Would you take advantage of the fact that Nikola Vucevic is playing out of his mind right now, All-Star game, even though we have a really bad season, suffering injuries, of course, but he's playing really well? Is now the time to sell Nikola Vucevic?
Well, I think that if you're looking at who would be interested, and we mentioned a few teams earlier, if you let's say you send him to Portland, and Portland ends up, finishing 5th or 4th or 5th in the NBA next season. So then your draft pick is still, if you were to get a first round pick back, then you're picking late in the first round. So I don't know that is really, as you said, the best return for sending him somewhere else. I mean, I think you make a good point that he means so much to this team at this point that you really would be taking many steps backward if you were to trade him. That may not be a popular sentiment among fans, but I think that's more of a reality at this point based on who they have available. I mean, if you take away what he means to the offense, where do you go from there?
That is your offense.
Where do you put in his place? I mean, I love Jonathan Isaac, but J.I. is a defensive guy at this point. His offense is still yet to develop. Same with Aaron Gordon. You see flashes of that, but consistently speaking, not even close to Vucevic's level at this point. You're not going to have that offensive piece. I mean, if you look at the way this team is built, there's a lot of defense around. You've got to have some offense, and that's not to say that they couldn't get better offensively in other areas as well, but I just think when you remove Vooch from the equation, you're just looking at a lot more problems.
And Roy, you bring up Aaron Gordon. Now, what do you see him fitting next season? So, yeah, of course, you have Isaac coming back. You have Chuma Okeke, who's playing really well, kind of developing. You have Al-Farouq Aminu off the bench. So a lot of forwards, big forwards, right? In that scenario, do you see AG coming back? Or do you see the Magic trying to move him, whether it's a deadline, the offseason? But do you see him in a Magic uniform at some point next season?
Yeah, I think so too. Again, the way that they value defense, and then that's what he gives them. He gives them a lot of defense when he's on the floor. I think you saw some parts of his game that started to come out a little bit that were using him off the ball. With the ball a lot more. Obviously, we knew about the point forward experiment. I shouldn't say experiment. That's probably not the right word to use, because he did play okay. I mean, granted, he hasn't played it since high school. So, obviously he's going to have some rust, but he has that kind of ability as a playmaker. I don't know that I don't think that they envision him to stay in that role. But certainly his versatility is something that benefited the Magic. I just think that he, his 3-point shot is still a little suspect. And then I think that's really where you've got two guys at the same position between him and J.I. And, offensively, it's, I don't know what the answers are. I really don't. I think that, AG is on that descending contract. He's got one more year after this one. So he's going to be in kind of the same situation we're talking about with Evan Fournier right now. But I think he makes sense for a lot of other teams too. He's still an extremely, extremely athletic player. He's still fairly young with a lot of NBA experience. If he can get to the 4 and stay there and play in that position for a whole season, then you probably see a little bit more of what he's capable of doing. So, I think that they still value him very highly. I just don't know what their asking price is. I think that that's probably what's holding them back. They feel like he's probably worth a little more than what they want to give up. So, that he and J.I. played a little bit, half the season last year before J.I. was hurt. So, and they did play a little better when Aaron moved into the 4. They hit a pretty good stretch there, but, I don't even know if they're entertaining the idea of maybe playing Jonathan at the 5 a little bit if they were to trade Vooch. I don't know if that's something that they've talked about, moving forward. I know it's something Steve Clifford had talked about last year in the bubble. He wanted to play Isaac at the 5 a little bit. Unfortunately, didn't get that chance, but that might be an interesting rotation. But I just think giving up on Vooch is just too much offense. Just
if you play Jonathan Isaac at the 5, Mo will never see the floor.
Well,
not even on the bench will he be able to see the floor. Like the only way that man's going to be able to see the floor is if he's watching the game on TV, so that he's actually able to see the court, which, I feel for the guy. Now when you talk about Aaron Gordon and kind of his fit, I think what makes that decision, or what may seem like it could make a decision just a little bit easier, is obviously the rise of Chuma Okeke. For me, as a fan that watches every single game, I am blown away. He already exceeded my expectations because he was a wild card. You really didn't know what to expect with Chuma. You knew a little bit of him, but he experienced an injury in college. And then, at first he played really timid and really nervous, which, granted, big injury, NBA, so many different things. He's a young kid, but he's playing really, really well. So seeing Chuma Okeke, seeing, Aminu, and hopefully they can maintain healthy. But I think that we may see a situation where maybe they feel confident and comfortable with the forwards that they have. So recently, John Hammon, and it's great because our front office, they really don't speak a whole lot. So any chance that they get to come out and speak publicly to the fan base is great, because we get to at least hear a little bit of insight. And I won't bore you with the actual quotations, but in essence, I'm not sure if you heard it, but in essence, John Hammond, he ended up saying that, making it to the playoffs a 3rd time in a row, it would be great. It'd be nice, but that they're not losing the ultimate goal, and that's to win championships. Players are looking to win championships. Coaches are looking to win championships, and the front office, they have that exact same mindset. When you hear that from the front office, that they have that in mind, are you buying it? Because the way that I see it is, it's great. That's what we want to hear, but actions speak louder than words.
So if you look at the way that they've drafted with the idea of putting together teams with length, so now you take Jonathan Isaac, he's out of the picture. As you mentioned with Mo, it's been a crazy couple of years with Mo. And they picked Chuma. You don't know quite what you're going to get with Chuma because of the injury, as you mentioned. And then they picked Cole Anthony. So, and only one of those guys is getting any playing time at this point. So I think that to be fair, if you look at what they're have been trying to do, it looks like they are trying to move in that direction. But the guys that they figured, and Markelle, trading for Markelle, the guys they want to help push in that direction aren't out there. So not to deflect or say that they, that maybe they couldn't be doing more, but I just think it's hard to say they're not really trying when the guys that they thought they were going to have to help push the team in that direction aren't out there. And certainly the Magic aren't the only team that's been hit by injuries, but when you lose players who are as important as these guys are, and when you have that much, such a small margin for error anyway, and you've got to play really well to be one of the better teams in the league. I think that, that really can derail you pretty quickly. And I think that you made a good point too, Anthony, about Chuma. They definitely like like him a lot. And as you said, there's a lot to like. He plays with such great poise. Just his play just belies his age. You just wouldn't think that he's only 22 years old playing this now his 15th, 16th NBA game. And then something that they talked about early in the season was, look, we want him to play, but we don't want to throw lofty expectations at him. And I think they've done a good job of letting him get out there, letting him fill different roles. You see him getting more confident all the time. And that certainly is the type of progression that could maybe lead to trading Aaron Gordon, if Chuma gets to the point where he's able to handle a lot more minutes, and you can take an asset and flip it and get a bigger asset, when you've got somebody who's able to absorb those minutes and play well. So that certainly is a possibility, particularly if Aminu continues to stay healthy and they got him for next season. He's able to provide minutes. So, Chuma, is able to get valuable playing time and still have all the pressure, maybe of being a starter or a guy that they got, he's got to score 18 points a game, something like that. But I just think that, the condensed off season is really cut into what he and Cole Anthony, were able to do in the off season, all the rookies. So just the fact that they're a little bit behind, it makes his play more impressive. Definitely a bright future, moving forward. So, but I think that when obviously Chuma's a piece that they want to lean on. So, I just think that I don't know if it's, as realistic as I hear some fans saying, well, why don't we just trade for Bradley Beal? Well, do you understand what exactly that would require you to get Bradley Beal, right? You understand how much money that he makes a season, what you'd have to give up.
An arm, a leg, all your fingers, all your toes.
I get it. Absolutely. Who wouldn't want to have Bradley Beal on their team? Absolutely. I'm sure Jeff Weltman would take that in a heartbeat if it worked for them.
100%.
Yeah. So I think that it's just sort of all about perspective a little bit. And, and I know fans are frustrated and they don't want to hear another, hey, we just, we're going to make the playoffs for the third year in a row. We want to make progress. And, and if we keep having the same team out there and we're not making any progress, maybe we should make a change. But I think that they haven't had that team out there. So whether or not they could make the jump with that team, I don't know. Nobody knows. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe it is time to take this opportunity to mix things up a little bit. But I just think when you start moving your best pieces and you're just going to put yourself farther behind, particularly when you've got two of your best players, two of your core players who are coming off major injuries that you just don't know yet, how they're going to be able to perform next year. So I think it's just really risky, to do that. But I totally understand where fans are coming from, in terms of, look, maybe we got to do something, this just isn't working. But, I think to be fair, you have to kind of step back and see what they've been able to put on the court too. So
I think that what makes it hard is that it feels like it just so happens that every draft that we have, it's a player that's just injury prone, and it's tough. But a part of me kind of felt like maybe that was the plan, because they said it from the very beginning that that it's not something that they're looking to turn around right away. That it's going to take some time. They're looking for the future, and we're looking at a few years down the road, and it's like, man, great, we made the playoffs. And that's the part that is kind of conflicting, right? Because it's a double-edged sword that we got so antsy about not making the playoffs. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to feel that. And then finally we get that, and now that's not enough. We want more. And great, yeah, Bradley Beal to this team would be amazing. I've always talked about, Nikola Vucevic. If you were to get this man to play, have Nikola Vucevic not be your number one option, you bring in a player that is a lot better than Nikola Vucevic, then he's just going to be better all around and is going to be able to help out so much. We haven't been able to see that just yet. And a lot of people are expecting for this draft to be, a franchise-changing draft. You talked a little bit about, Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier right now, I want to say I read an article on Hoops Hype where they were listing the top available shooting guards, and Evan Fournier was top 3 on that list on available shooting guards. And he's on your roster as it is. You obviously don't want to have that financial commitment for an Evan Fournier, so where are you going to find that shooting guard? And that's either going to come via trade, but you're right. Who's willing to make the trade for, a player that is expiring, unless they have a disgruntled player, which is normally when you would take advantage. But other than that, you're kind of hoping that, the draft is where you're going to find that player.
Yeah, no question. And, and even then, I mean, if you look at some of the rookies this year, some of the guys that I was, kind of high on, and I'll tell you, the Magic surprised me not really surprised me.
It surprised me.
Well, we knew he was on their radar, but I really thought that they would pick a shooter. I thought Saddiq Bey was a guy that fit pretty well here. I even liked, Maxey as a guy that could really step in and be a nice spark plug.
And he's playing well.
He is playing really well. And again, maybe it's all about the teams that they go to, the system that they're playing in, and the coach that they have, and those sorts of things. It's all sorts of factors. I mean, we could talk about rookies who are not having very good seasons. They're struggling a little bit. Anthony Edwards has been up and down in Minnesota. I mean, I know that's not the greatest roster, around him, but he's kind of been up and down. Obviously Wiseman's been hurt, but in terms of shooters, I thought Saddiq Bey would have been a good guy. I mean, I think they really wanted to pick Nesmith if the Celtics hadn't taken him. That's a guy that can really stretch the floor too. So you're right. Who do you get? I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, we want to move player A, but we need player B to become player A. So where do we find that player? It's just a big game of chess. You can't just move one piece without having to move another piece. And then if you don't make the right move, then, you're talking about negative ramifications. So it's tough. If Evan goes to free agency, he's probably going to get a lot more money, and, that's good for him. I mean, that's just the way it works. You get better, you get paid. So, you're not going to be able to find a shooter for $16 million a year. I mean, that's just not the way it's going to work. So you have to find, if you said, like you said, in the draft, and then does it take that guy time to develop? Does he step in and play well right away? Who knows? Does he get hurt in the 15th game of the season, taking a charge? I think that's what happened to Cole. So is that what happens? That's one thing I've learned covering this game is just so unpredictable. The best laid plans, can be, thrown aside quickly, when things like this happen, when injuries come up, or, guys not playing well and his confidence is shaken a little bit. And then it takes him 20 games to get out of it. So it's just a crazy game.
It is. And I think that's something that I think I've said over the last 3 to 4 episodes. I think I've said it in every single one. I wouldn't want to be in that front office right now making those decisions, because it is a lot coming up and that they have to make decisions on, whether, again, it's the Fournier situation, what to do with AG, what to do with next season, the draft. It's a lot going on. As fans, we like it. We like the transactions, the trades, and all that good stuff. But as the people making those decisions, it is not easy at all. So it's going to be interesting for a fan base to witness all this kind of develop. But I'm going to put you, Roy, to wrap it up here today, I'm going to put you on that GM seat for a second. And I'm going to ask you, if you were the person running the Magic, what would that trade deadline look like for you? What would you do? And then taking it back to reality, what do you think actually will happen? What do you think the Magic will do here in 30 days when the deadline comes up?
Well, I would trade for Nolan Arenado. That's what I would do, so. Just to your point, Al, I mean, they've been after Nolan Arenado for like 5 years now. So then, they finally made the trade for him this offseason. So, sorry to throw a little baseball in there, but I think it's just like they finally felt like that was the time was right to do it. So I think that's where the Magic front office is. There's just like, you could almost flip a coin. You could stay where you are. I think they're in a really tough spot. Do you shed some of your better players and try to get some assets and move forward and hope that your young guys pan out? And if they don't, you're taking another step back. So now you're putting yourself maybe a year or two behind. But is that move worth it in the long run? I think the injuries just make it so hard to predict, just because I think they've had a pretty good team in place, and they just haven't been able to put those guys on the floor. So I like Cole as a player. I think that he's got a pretty good future moving forward. I think he would fit well alongside Markelle. I don't know if he's ready to step in and be the 2 guard next year. So I think that, you maybe you draft another shooting guard. Maybe you find a trade partner for Evan. You get a second round pick. Maybe you get a serviceable player back for him. And you focus on the draft. So, and then you're able to, this is a hard question. I haven't really thought about it that much.
For me, it seems like any predictions that I have ever done for what the Magic might do, they do the 100% complete opposite. That's why a lot of times when we hear different reports that come out for the Magic, we know that this front office, it's not coming from them. They keep everything close to the chest. Yeah. And the whole Markelle, like, for example, the Markelle Fultz trade that we did in the last minute, just a couple minutes before the trade deadline, Markelle Fultz was left field. Nobody reported anything about possibility, talk. There was none of that. And the fact that they were able to pull that out, really goes to show that, our front office, we need to give them a little credit. But yet they haven't done anything that was a heavy risk. And my fear has always been that our front office, they're conservative. And I believe that they may overvalue our players. And they just haven't found something that they liked. What makes it hard is that every year that we wait, these players are getting older. And maybe the hype and the value, for an example, a player like Aaron Gordon may not be as high at the age of 25 than it would have been at the age of 23. These players are, they're veterans, and it's hard to believe that because, everything went by so fast. It feels like just the other day we traded Elfrid Payton for a second round pick and a bag of chips, and that might be the possibility of what we do with Evan Fournier, just to make sure that we don't get left with anything. And I think that what makes it fun is the fact that we're going to find the actual answers out in less than 30 days. And March 25th is coming around a lot faster than what people assume. So I guess to save you off the hot seat, I guess we'll just kind of wait and see what happens. But Roy, it was such a pleasure having you on this show with us. Thank you so much for not only taking the day off just to be on our show. I'm just kidding. I know it's your wife's birthday, but we'll use that as an excuse. We appreciate you coming on with us. And again, man, we love everything you do. And I look forward to us talking about what actually ends up happening.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to come on anytime, guys. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, it's a wrap for this episode. Talk to you guys later. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the OZone Podcast, the voice of Magic fans. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the OZone Pod. And remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on all your favorite podcast listening platforms.